Are you good? How was lunch? I get nervous. I can't sit. I'm sorry. I know it's cooler to sit on a stool, but it makes me awkward. As everybody is coming in, this is the session that we are going to talk about why we have church the way we do. So this is going to be us specific because the deal is let's go pre-Hurricane Ike. This was 100% traditional Pentecostal church, okay? And I mean that in a good way. I'm not being ugly. I'm not using traditional as a bad word. But we were very, very, very traditional. And we had the first hour Sunday school. We had the next hour was the praise and worship. We had an adult choir on Sunday morning, a youth choir on Sunday night. Every Wednesday night we had a kids choir. And so I was a teenager during the choir years, and I still love choirs. I think they're awesome because it gets people involved. However, when a hurricane hits, if you need a hurricane, we can arrange one for you. No. When the hurricane hit, it kind of messed us up a little bit because we were out of this building and we were into, when I tell you it was the worst auditorium you have ever in your life seen, it was that. It was built in the 60s and had not been touched since then. And so the walls were like a mint green. The seats were a real bright orange that were probably not always orange, but over time they turned orange. And we would come in and we had to set up every single service, tear down between Sunday morning and Sunday night, and set up for Wednesday night because it was an active school auditorium. So we were tearing down, setting up, setting up, and that was 7 years ago. Okay, so that was our lives. And for a year and a half, we tore down and set up. And the problem was we had 1 hour to have service. So if you want to get real intentional about what matters, try and fit your whole service into an hour. Because if that doesn't teach you how to make your services intentional, nothing will. Because the pastor doesn't get to preach 55 minutes when you have time to say hi and take an offering, and then it's time to preach. So anyway, so our teardown setup took place every morning after every single service, twice on Sundays and once on Wednesdays. Well, it caused us to get to the point where, okay, we have to decide what this church identity is. Well, we had no time to practice as a choir. We had to set up the whole morning, and so there was no time to fit in a choir practice. We didn't have a building to have choir practices in, so there was no choir anymore. We did try and start it back when we came back in the building, but you give people a year and a half off of coming to Sunday morning services early to practice, they're like, bye. I'm done with choirs. And so I am very much a black gospel. I even have an apostrophe in my name. I am a black gospel person. That is my music. That is what every morning getting ready. I know my husband loves me for this. I blare 90s black gospel, and he's fine with that. But we grew up in the choir age, and so we loved the choirs. We loved it. But what we found is Israel was in Houston, and we are competing. We're not competing, but the culture created in Houston is praise and worship. And so if we want to reach Houston, we had to do the praise and worship stuff. And I'll just be really honest with you. Jonathan's talking, so he's not listening to me. I don't really love praise and worship music. I'm good with Donnie McClurkin. I don't want to hear Chris Tomlin. And so he's still not listening to me. Yes. No, turn around and talk. So Now, when they do it, I'm good. But just to listen to the recordings of that, I'm like, ugh, come on, somebody do something other than just sing your song. And so anyway, I struggle with that, but I realized that when our people, and I'm going to be very telling, we sang a song 2 years ago at Easter that I had never in my life heard before. And I was sitting in the audience and I thought, I don't know this song. Nobody's going to know this song. Why are we doing a brand new song at Easter? And so I've got my hands up and I'm thinking, God, nobody's going to be worshiping to this song. Nobody's going to be worshiping to this song. And I hear Jonathan say, cut the music. Everybody sing. And I thought, nobody is going to know this song. The entire crowd, save me, knew this song. And it was No Longer a Slave to Fear. And I, in my non-white thinking, was I would never listen to this song on the radio ever. And they stopped the music, and I'm telling you, an Easter crowd. This is not people that go to church regularly all the time, every single service. An Easter crowd sang the entire chorus without missing a word. And it dawned on me, this song is on the radio. People are listening to this song on the radio. And they are hearing it in the city of Houston, and shame on us for not singing it if this is what people are listening to. And so it was such a moment for me personally, because I'm good with Andre Crouch, Kirk Franklin, Donnie McClurkin. We can go way back. I'll go with you back there. And I'm really comfortable with that kind of stuff, that I can kind of move on, and it's just like, but when you have to sing songs like I'm No Longer a Slave to Fear, and you hear your entire audience singing along, worshiping, because they have been praying to that song during the week, they have been listening to it, they have been worshiping with it, and they're not listening to my Black Gospel Pandora radio station. I don't know why. They should be. But they didn't care that I was jamming to Donnie McClurkin that morning. They were listening to the Chris Tomlin, because that's what's played on our radio stations. And so for me personally, it was a shift, because I directed a youth choir for 15 years. I love, it still tells when I worship that I'm used to moving a little bit. I'm used to just standing here with my arms up. I'm from the generation of everybody sways when you sing. I mean, so it dawned on me that everybody is not listening to the music I'm listening to. And that if we're going to be a church for the lost people, we're going to have to be a church that fits our city and our culture. Now, if you are in Chicago, your musical selections will not look like what's in Houston or LA or New York. It's all going to be different. But wherever you are, you've got to be true to the culture of the city you're in. And so with Israel being from Houston and all of his music being what the city of Houston listens to, guess what we do a lot of? Israel. Because that's what Houston listens to. And so we are true to that. What you see, the way we dress, the music we sing, it's not necessarily my preference, but it is my city's. And so if I'm going to say I want to reach them, then I'm going to have to reach them in all the services. So that is why everything you see, everything we do is very intentional with the concept of others, regardless of our personal preferences. Tyler grew up, he can sing somewhat. And
thank you.
He grew up in Louisiana Allstate, and that's where he learned to sing. All my Louisiana people, y'all cheer for everything. If I said LSU, y'all be running the aisles right now. Woo-hoo-hoo. You got to have something.
John, mute her mic, please.
It's really a problem. Like, our entire staff is from the state of Louisiana. Cameron, John, Jonathan, Tyler, like they're all from Louisiana. I have to be the one, like, I have to bring them down a little bit. So anyway, Tyler grew up singing in a choir. I grew up singing in a choir. I directed a choir. He directed a choir. We love that kind of music, but that's not what reaches our city. And so we have decided to intentionally modify our church services to fit what reaches our city. So let me just kind of walk through some things that will help you get a guest back to your church, okay? Because our only goal, our biggest compliment is second-time guests. Because if you get them to come back, that means you've done something right. First-time guests, we love them. But second-time guests, that means, okay, we're reaching them. And so that is our highest calling. Our greatest honor is for somebody to be a second-time guest. And so when we want to get people back to our church, you have to know what to do and what not to do to get them to come back to your church. And so we're going to walk through a few things. Why people don't come back. Number one, their first impression was bad. Our lobby should look like every level of growth in your church. And I mean that both in a spiritual sense and an age sense. If somebody walks into your lobby and it's only one generation, and it's typically an older generation, and they all look like exactly like us, then it's going to make the new person feel a little bit uncomfortable. Because that is not a comfortable environment to walk in and be like, everybody here is an older generation than me. There's no place for me here. And so the first moment when they walk in the door, I do a session called From Parking Lot to the Pew. Everything in your church speaks. Who you've got out in the lobby is speaking louder than what you're doing up on this stage. Because if they're out there and they see only elderly people and only people that look 100% Pentecostal, well, they can't aspire to that. It's like, well, oh my goodness, I can't ever measure up to that. And so after they go through the 4-week First Steps process, one of the first things I try and encourage anybody with a good personality is to come out and help me greet. Because that is an easy, instant tie-in, instant plug-in. And our greeters love each other. They have fun. Clearly, you've seen them around. And they love being out there and love being with each other. And they're on every stage of development. They're every ethnicity. They're every multicultural bit that we have in this church. They're every generation we have in this church. On Sundays, we have our JV Dream Team, which is our juniors. And they are our Waves, our kids' ministries Dream Team. And so they are our junior Dream Team. And they are out at every doors with us helping greet because you need kids in your lobby. You need to show families that it's okay if you've got kids here and we are a welcoming place. We have a place for them. There is a place for kids to serve in this church. And so that is a huge deal. And if they get told when they walk in the building, hey, you need to take your hat off, or hey, you can't come in here with this, or hey, you need to go put on a jacket over that blouse before you come in. If they get a bad experience walking in, you're never going to get them back. And unfortunately, one comment can change their mind about your church. And so like I was talking about yesterday, culture, we all innately act and respond the same way. So when somebody walks in our sanctuary doors with a cup of coffee, guess what? We all just kind of be like, well, they're drinking a cup of coffee. We all drink coffee. I don't want big frappuccinos in this building, but if you're going to bring them in this building on a Sunday morning and sit on the front row with a Starbucks unicorn drink, then go ahead. I don't care. It's not affecting. What is it affecting? And I know we respect the house of God, but to them, they don't know yet. They don't know what we have yet. And so let them walk in. So I said this. I said, because you have to teach culture. You know that, right? Like you can't just hope it happens. So I was up teaching one Sunday night, and I said, look, if somebody walks in here with a dog, let them walk in with a dog. Because we have had a lady sit in the back, and she had a Chihuahua, and none of us knew she had a dog, and she had it in her jacket, and it was like peeking out, and we're like, oh, that's a dog, okay. And none of us even realized she had it. Well, I'm not lying. The next Sunday morning, we had a Great Dane come down the aisle, and I thought, oh, I told our ushers to not say no. And that dog sat right here, And he would worship, when we were worshiping, he was up. When we were all sitting, he was laying down. I thought, well, at least he knows. So anyway, we just say, yes, we're not going to tell you no. Now, I prefer, obviously, our saints don't bring their dogs to church. But if a guest comes in and they have a Chihuahua, we try and get them to sit in back now. We learned our lesson because the dog kept walking back and forth when everybody was up moving. So we try to not say no. And a bad first impression means they're never coming back. What you later do to try and make it work is never going to overcome but that first moment. And so everything speaks. Make sure your lobby people that are out there are a loving, welcoming group of people that are happy to have them. Make sure when they come in, they're welcomed. They're not sitting alone. They never pray alone. And that you're with them the entire time. So the second thing is the worship service. Now, I'm married to a worship leader, and we have an amazing worship team here. And they sweat the details of what they do just as much as they sweat the actual song. Transitions between the two are just as important as what they're going to sing. Themes, if it doesn't go together, if they don't flow together, then they don't do it. If there's ever a break in worship and you have to stop to change to a completely different themed song, they don't do that. It's a very conscious effort to make service flow. And if weird things happen, and you know what I mean by weird, like that's, you can plug it into your situation. If weird things happen in worship, that's a turnoff for people. Like, because worship is an intimate moment with God anyway. And so if people are uncomfortable in that moment because of things you're doing, and you've got 7 different soloists that are gonna sing their solo, and you better not give it to anybody else because that's mine. I know y'all don't have those people at your church. If the worship service is not an impacting moment, then you can't usher people into the presence of God, and your pastor is starting from scratch trying to get a move of God in the building. So we ask our singers to, first of all, get in touch with God before they ever get up here and sweat the transitions. Make sure they flow. Make sure everything works together the way it should, because a bad worship service is going to be a turnoff. Music is very big in our world. I don't know if you know that. People like music, and it should be reflective of your culture and the area you live in. Preaching. I don't preach. If I did, everything I talked about would have to be relevant to who I'm speaking to. I love that we have Bible colleges and that we have seminaries and that we have things that you can go in depth in God's Word. I love that. It's needed. We need to know the Bible inside and out. But when you are speaking on a Sunday morning and you decide to go into the hermeneutics and homiletics, you've lost everybody. You've got saints on the pew that have been in this all their lives that don't even want to teach a search for truth because they're afraid they're going to get asked questions that they don't know the answer to. People care. Your first-time guests don't know what you're talking about. And if you are going so in-depth that they can't grasp and they can't relate to what's going on in the service, they're not going to come back because it didn't minister to them. That's why I like the I'm Struggling series that we did. I mean, like, we got real. Like, way, way, way real. And from pills to porn. I mean, like, it was taboo. It was issues. But people have issues. And so you can't pretend to be in this world of everybody cares about my homiletics. I don't even know the word. I need to go to Bible college. The homiletics, they don't care. They just want to know, how can I get deliverance from this addiction? Or how do I deal with the hurt that I'm experiencing? Or how do I deal with the fact that I was abused as a child? I mean, if you want to go there, if you want to get people healthy in a healthy church culture, you've got to go there. You can't pretend that everybody cares about the stuff that nobody cares about. They just want deliverance. And so Tyler said it yesterday, the sermons have to pass the who cares test. If nobody in the building cares about what you're talking about, then you're not reaching anyone. So anyway, the culture, you've got to find different ways to connect with people. If your culture is not good, and we talked about this yesterday, if the culture of your church is not a warm and welcoming place, people aren't coming back. If you're not happy to be at your church on a Sunday morning, how can you expect your people to be excited? If you're not your church's biggest fan, then how can you expect people that have to sit and listen to you not be to be more excited than you are? They're never going to be more excited about it than you are. And I know people that follow me on my Instagram page have to be like, oh my goodness, would she stop? But all I do is post videos of this church and what I'm doing here and what people are doing here because I love this place. I love these people. And this is my calling, and it should be you should feel that way about your church. And if you don't, you need to find a way to get excited about your church again. And if that means making some culture shifts, you need to do it. So I said it yesterday, but pay somebody to come into your building and assess what they felt and how they felt when they walked in. Because if we don't make our church services resemble what reaches the lost, then we're not going to reach the lost. We focus so much on reaching Pentecostal people that we forget what it's like to be a lost soul and to walk into those doors for the first time and feel this feeling like, oh my God, what is this? And if you bomb them during the lobby and they get tacky comments, they're never going to make it into your sanctuary. Break down every wall. If you see a new mom walking in with 7 bags and pushing a stroller and she's got a 2-year-old and she's pushing an infant, help her. She needs your help. And break down the walls. We have a lady that came to our church. She had watched us online. And she walked in with her 5-year-old little boy. And we have to check everybody in when they come in. So we have name badges and everything. We use Planning Center for that. And she checked them in, and I said, awesome. I said, I'm so glad to have you here. Anything we need to know about your little boy? And she said, oh, yeah, well, he's eaten up with cancer. And I just kind of looked at her, and she said, yeah, he's got cancer, but it's good. It's good. And I thought, this woman came as a single mom to our church with a 5-year-old that's eaten up with cancer. And you better believe we're going to do everything we can to reach that lady. And she is a proud member of our church now and is doing amazing. And God is doing wonderful works in that little boy. But you've got to realize that when people walk in your doors, they're walking in out of curiosity or out of need. And if you ignore the fact that these people are hurting and they're in need, and if you walk up to them and be like, if you don't mind, if you could just pull your skirt down a little bit before you come in the sanctuary, that'd be great. And you laugh, but people do it. Do you mind pinning your shirt, putting a jacket over that? Sir, we don't allow hats in here. Who cares? If they're here, they're hurting. And they need your love. And when you show them the love of God, they're going to come back. And that is our biggest goal. Our only goal is to get them to come back.
There was a study done that went into the reasons that people don't come back. And if you got a pen, if you got your book, maybe want to write some of these down. The first one was that the service was inaccessible, meaning that there was a lot of stuff going on that they didn't understand and nobody explained it. And so something I would point out to you is we're not up here telling you to quench the spirit. We're not up here telling you to not be an apostolic church. We're saying realize that brand new people need explanations. If something unusual happens, explain why it happens and what it means. Don't leave people to just wonder, because their first impression is going to be that, oh, well, that was a weird place. The second one is that there was a lot of jargon that they didn't understand. You do know that we do that sometimes. We tell this. There's an awesome story. Yeah, there's an awesome story. We had we had a big outreach event one time, and we somehow wound up coming out of the fruits of all of our labors on a Friday night. We picked up a drunk homeless man downtown Houston, brought him back to the church. We didn't think this through real well. Somebody's got to take him back down there when this is all over with. We brought him to the church. They were going to baptize him. And so he's drunk. He's out of his mind. We get him into the baptistry, and some well-meaning minister said, "Sir, we're about to wash you in the blood of the Lamb." Now, I don't know if you've ever said that to a drunk man before in your baptistry. He was not excited about the prospect. I don't want to be washed in Lamb's blood. I don't want to be washed in Lamb's blood. Well, I don't either, as it comes down to that. But we've always said that. I knew what it meant. But the poor guy, he had no idea. You've got to be careful. You've got to filter everything through the uninitiated. Everything you say, every sermon you preach, every bit of language that you use, we constantly have these conversations. Is there a better way to describe this? Is there a better way to say this in a way that somebody who doesn't speak our language yet will understand it? The next one was that the preacher was answering questions that nobody was asking. Or the third one, I mean. Answering questions that nobody was asking. I'll just let that one preach to you on its own. And the last one was it was difficult to connect. And I don't know if you've ever stepped into a scenario, into a church service, into a place where you as a guest, and maybe you've had occasion, I've visited some churches before, and I just felt like such an outsider. We'd be on a vacation, or we'd be out of town for a trip, and I'd slip into a church, and if people didn't know who I was, then I was just left alone. It's happened at least 2 different times, very impacting ways in my life. I was just left completely alone, and I thought, well, my goodness, I would never want to come to this church. Now, I'm vastly more forgiving than the average person walking in off the street. I knew at least that it was a truth-preaching church. I knew that I would feel the presence of God there. But those people walking in off the street, they don't know that. They don't owe you the benefit of a doubt. They don't. And very often they won't give it to you. You've got just a few minutes. You've got just a few minutes to make a first impression that lasts. We should never forget what it's like to be lost. Lost people don't know what it's like to be saved. They don't know. They don't understand where you're coming from. They don't understand your context. They've never been where you are. You have been where they are. And so I can't expect them to know where we are, but shame on us if we ever forget what it's like to be a lost person. To be searching and just needing a hand to reach out and somebody to say, hey, come and go with it. Come join with us. You're going to love it here. You're going to love it here. You know why the average church is not growing? This is an important thing to talk about because this is a church growth conference. You know what the main problem is? The main problem is not systems. The main problem is not processes. The main problem is not that you're doing something wrong. The main problem is not that we've tried this and it failed. The main problem is that there aren't lost people there. The primary goal of all of our efforts has got to become reaching lost people. Reaching people who need what we have. Not just hoping that people will somehow find us and step into our facilities and just by magic they'll be transformed. We've got to get aggressive with prioritizing lost people. And when you prioritize lost people, when they come first, that means everybody else comes second. We are more concerned with what we're trying to reach than what we're trying to keep. Every service, every Sunday, we are more concerned with what we're trying to reach than what we're trying to keep. Because what we found is that the people who are most worth keeping are the ones that love the mission of Jesus Christ, which is to seek and save the lost. And you get those people on board, they don't care what song you sing. They don't care what you do. They don't care what the dynamic of the service is. They just want to get in on the rescue mission. So we gear every decision we make, every song we sing, every way we make announcements, every sermon. If you were to come in here on an average Sunday morning, now, you know, and you have seen this week and before, you know that my father-in-law is one of the greatest preachers on this planet. He can blow your mind, your brain just laying in a puddle on the floor when he flexes his spiritual muscles. But he rarely does that on Sunday mornings. You would come in on Sunday morning and you would be very shocked at how simple his presentation of the gospel is every Sunday morning. Because we have all realized, we've all gotten in on this, we would rather be effective than impressive. We would all rather be effective than impressive. That's the worship team, that's the worship leaders, that's the sermons that are preached up here. You would come in here on an average Sunday morning and you would say, well, what do you do for discipleship? Well, we start discipleship on Sunday mornings. Our Sunday mornings, we deal with the basics week after week. We're going to talk about prayer. We're going to talk about baptism. We're going to talk about the grace of God. We're going to talk about faith. We're going to talk about serving with gladness. We're going to present the gospel. We're going to present our beliefs. We're going to present our doctrine in a simple way that unbelievers can understand it and hear it and embrace it and grow through it. And so we've just realized, and you know, there's been lots of drama over the years. There was a great disservice done to the church years ago when the attractional model came in, that, you know, everything we do is just to hype people up and get them here. That's not what we're doing. But we also don't want to be a model that just pushes people away and says, unless you speak our language and know what we're doing here, you're not going to have the slightest idea what's going on in this building. And you know as well as I do that sometimes things happen. Sometimes things happen in this church that I've been in this, I've seen everything, and I don't even know what's going on sometimes. And you know it's that way in your church too. There are moments, there are things that happen sometimes, and we're so deliberate about this, and we're so careful with it. We try to make sure we explain everything. And sometimes I'm left scratching my own head. What just happened? But you've got to realize, and we say this in multiple sessions, everything speaks. Everything that happens is communicating something about your church. You're the image of your church, what your church is like, what your church feels like, what your church is built on, what your church values. That's all being communicated. And it's not just being communicated by whoever is in the microphone preaching the sermon that day. It's being communicated by the whole of everybody that's in the room and everybody that's come together. And so we've got to get our churches as a whole into realizing that we are here for others. We are here to worship in a way that invites others to worship that don't know how to worship. We're going to show them how. We're here to explain the scriptures in a way that brand new people that have never heard this before can understand it. You know, something that we're careful about, and we'll kind of beat each other up over this. I'm guilty of it all the time. I'll step up, we're doing a prayer moment, and I'll say, you know, in the parable of the woman with the issue of blood, and I'll go into well, if you're brand new, you don't know. Actually, I don't know about the parable of the woman with the issue of blood. That sounds weird. What is that? I didn't listen to my great theological revelation that I had in prayer there that moment, and I just wanted to spit that out, sneak a preach. They don't know what that is. So I try to be so careful now. I can still do that. I can still use that example, but I've got to explain from the beginning what is the parable of the woman with the issue of blood. Because everybody doesn't know. Everybody doesn't even know that Noah had an ark. They think Moses had an ark. They don't remember. They're not sure on the details. Don't assume that people know. Because I guarantee you somebody doesn't know. And chances are the one that doesn't know is the very one you need to reach for the most. All right. I want to give you 5 things about services. Just 5 things. And again, this is something you can write down. Number 1, services should be authentic. And what I mean by that is they shouldn't be contrived. Services should never be a performance. You shouldn't try to be something you're not. And I'm careful to say that. And I know that you may come into this place, you see the way we have church, and you think, well, that's not us. That's fine. Because what speaks most is authenticity. If people know it's the real you, and you are doing what you do with a pure heart, and you're doing this unto God as a sacrifice of worship, then do it. Consider your guests, but be authentic. Don't try to get up there and become something that you're not. Be true to who you are. If you're an apostolic church, be an apostolic church. Just explain what it means. Second one, services should be relevant. And again, that's one of those dirty words that people want to steer clear of and say, oh, he's talking about being relevant. Well, they should be. And by relevant, what I mean is they should apply to the lives that people are living now. They should minister to people's felt needs. They should matter. Your church service has to matter to somebody. Third one, this is a big one. Church services should be enjoyable. It should be fun. Why shouldn't being in the presence of God with the people of God be the most enjoyable thing that happens all week? People don't need to leave a church service feeling like they've been beaten down. They need to feel like they've been lifted up. They should enjoy the house of God. They should enjoy the people of God. They should enjoy the Word of God. And it's all in your presentation. Fourth one, services should be accepting. And that's really what Tennille was talking about earlier. You've got to be accepting. You've got to realize that there's a whole world out there, and people are coming from a lot of different places, a lot of different backgrounds, and we're bringing them all into this big melting pot called the presence of God. And you got to welcome them as they are, because you know that God won't leave them like they are. But if you turn them away as they are, you'll never get the chance to see Him do a transforming work. And the last one, services should be powerful. Services should be powerful. There is something that should be different in your church than in the church down the street. There is something authentic about the people of God that have the revelation of His name, that if you don't capitalize on that, if you don't see miracles, signs, and wonders in your service, you are missing your greatest opportunity to advertise, look what God does in this place. God will transform your life. God will turn it all around in one moment. One moment in His presence is more valuable than anything else we could do, anything we could plan, anything we could put up here, any of our talents. One moment in the powerful presence of God is worth it all. So let me give you now, those are just the 5 facts, 5 focus points about the service. I want to give you now 10 ways that we do it. These are very practical, but I just want to point out these things. These are kind of our 10 focuses of what we try to make sure is taken care of here. Number 1, create services that people talk about. Create services that people talk about. I want people to leave here and get in their car and say, man, that was awesome today. The presence of God was there, or that was cool. And I want their kids to get in the car and say, Mommy, I loved that church. You want to know the best way? The best way to grow your church, reach kids. Because if that baby loves coming to your church, Mama and Daddy will tag along and bring their baby to what they enjoy. You've got to prioritize reaching children. Second thing, you have to know why the unchurched are unchurched. You have to realize what people are going through and what has left them in the condition that they are in. Because if you don't know that, you'll minister to everything but that. But if you can clarify why unchurched people are unchurched, what's missing from their lives, then you can deal with their issue. And if you deal with their felt issue, if you'll heal their felt issue, then they'll open the door for you to deal with the real issue, which is that their spirit and their soul needs a change in trajectory. Third thing, you got to impress them within the first 10 minutes. And I point that out not to say you need to have good church up here. Their first 10 minutes has nothing to do with this. You can have the best worship and the best preaching on the planet, and if they meet a mean usher on their way into the service, they're done. No second chances. No second chances. Their first 10 minutes from the parking lot to when they sit down before church starts, that's just as important as your sermon and as your song. So we all need to go home and pay attention to that. Prioritize your greeters. You need to find the one person that, you know what, if I could get you at my front door, it would change everything. Find them and then put them out there and let them encourage people and talk to people and strike up conversations, because you got about 10 minutes. They make up their mind if they'll ever come back long before they get into the church service proper. They got to love the environment of the place. All right, number 4, put your energy and resources into great praise and worship. Energy and resources into great praise and worship. Y'all, I'm going to give away some secrets, okay? It's so easy to look good doing praise and worship. Let me tell you why. Cameron, where are you at? Are you in here? I saw him somewhere. He's back there. Okay. Cameron's the guitar player that stands right over here. He's got a computer. He's got a Mac that you'll see it tonight. It stands on that little table right there. There's all kind of stuff happening on that computer that you don't have any idea that it's going on. When we kick into a song, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 musicians up here. Well, there's about 10 other guys inside that computer playing with us. You see 2 guitars. Well, there's 3 more guitars going on that. You see 2 or 3 keyboards. There's 2 more keyboards going on that. And it's got, there's a program, write this down. If you're involved in music, there's a program called Ableton Live. There are tracks. There's a website called multitracks.com. You can download tracks that have all of the band instruments in there. It's even got background vocals in some of them. And you say, well, I only have a drummer and I only have a keyboard player. Okay, that's fine. Turn on the bass. Turn on the other keyboards, turn on the electric guitars, and you've got 2 singers that can't hardly carry a tune. Turn on the background vocals, crank them up real loud, push play, and let's have church. There are resources out there that will level the playing field. There are resources available. So Ableton Live and multitracks.com. There's a lot of other places you can get tracks from, but for not too much money, you can get tracks that will make you look like a hero. You've got to invest in making your worship good. Making it good. Because here's the deal. No matter where you're from, no matter what the dynamic of your church is, large or small, everybody has been exposed to excellence. You do know all those people. Now, they're not supposed to, but they do have a TV. They've seen a concert or 2 in their time. They've heard good music. They know the difference. And there's so many resources out there. There is no excuse for not having excellent praise and worship, because you can push play on a computer and look like a hero, and nobody's any the wiser. All right, I'll leave that one alone. Number 5, children's ministry must be well-staffed, safe, clean, and fun. Children's ministry, well-staffed, safe, clean, and fun. I said it before, but if those kids don't love their experience, it also doesn't matter how much mom and dad loved it over here. If their kids didn't enjoy kids' church, bye. They're going to prioritize their children. And so it's got to be a safe environment. They've got to know that their kids are going to be okay over there. They can't walk in and see your junk piled up everywhere. Well, we've been meaning to get around to cleaning that up. And we had to clean out stuff in our own children's ministry this week. It just happens. We cleaned out everything this week. I didn't clean out the closet in my office. The one place you can't go in this building is the closet in my office. It's locked and nobody else has a key. All right. Next one. Deliver evangelistic messages that are interesting. Now, this is a tall order. Interesting, clear, biblical, relevant, hold your breath, and entertaining. It doesn't hurt for it to be enjoyable to hear you preach. Entertaining. And I know we say it all the time. You know, I'm not here to entertain you tonight, bless God. Well, I'm not here primarily to entertain you, but I hope you have a good time while we're together. I hope you smile a little bit. I hope you laugh a couple of times. Because what you don't realize in all of that, as you're up here presenting, if you're a minister, if you preach in this place, raise your hand. Preach or teach. All right, it's a lot of you, a vast majority of you. You are given the opportunity to minister to people's most intimate needs, their deepest problems, their most difficult things that they're dealing with in their lives. You are given the opportunity to deal with that. By them being present, they've basically expressed the fact that we're going to open up our heart and we trust that you've got something for us today. That should humble us, first of all. But I said it before, people should feel better. People should feel better. And yes, we're gonna feed them with biblical principles, but also it doesn't hurt to have them laugh a little bit. Just feel some joy. Not even the joy of the Lord, just the joy of sitting back and taking a breath and thinking, man, that felt good to just smile a little bit. Because when you're preaching, you are not just dealing with the spiritual man, you're dealing with the physical man as well. And so if all you say is, well, I'm only going to deal with your spiritual needs, well, if people don't get their natural needs dealt with and their emotional needs dealt with, their spirit's not even open to making a change. And some people are so weighted down in their emotions and in the issues that they're dealing with, their spirits are not ready for your biblical principles yet. They just want to know, can I feel better in this place? Can I find a smile that I haven't had in a long time? So we work very hard to give that to them here. All right, here's another one. Visitors are greeted warmly but allowed to remain anonymous. Greeted warmly but allowed to remain anonymous. Let me just go here. And everybody, we could pass this mic around. There's probably 300 different opinions on follow-up processes here. Let me just tell you something. Nobody wants you showing up at their house with a cake. I don't care how good the cake is. They're going to think, what is this person doing? Should we answer the front door or not? Do you think they'll leave the cake if we don't answer? People like their anonymity. That's why, and maybe it's just here. How many of you have problems getting guests to fill out guest cards? Pretty much everybody. We're terrible at it, just to be quite honest. You know why? It's not us. It's not a fault in the greeters. It's not a fault in the system. It's not a fault in the process. It's that people don't want to give you their information. They don't want you to know their name yet. They don't know if they like you yet. No, I'm not signing up for your emails. No, I don't want to. I don't want half the emails I already get. Why would I add you to it? And you're thinking, but we've got good things we need to tell you. They don't want to know. They don't want to know. You've got to get them to belong first. Now, if you get them to belong and feel like this is their place, they'll give you their information. But they're not just going to, well, sure, I would. You know what? I would love to sign up for yet another mailing list. How many of you do that? You go to the grocery store and they say, would you like to leave your email? No, I would not actually like to leave my email. Let them remain anonymous. Number 7, be predictably excellent. Be predictably excellent. I mentioned this earlier today. Do you know why you typically go to the same grocery store? It's because you know where everything is. Saves you time to go to the grocery store. When you go to the grocery store, you just take it for granted that the apples are going to be where the apples were the last time that I came to the grocery store. They're going to be polished. They're not going to be rotten apples there. You know where it is. You know what the quality is going to be. And so that's the grocery store you're going to use week after week. And if somebody new should move into your neighborhood and ask you, hey, where do you buy groceries? Where should I go? You're going to recommend the grocery store that you always go to, that you know where the apples are, and you know they're going to be good apples. Well, when churches are not predictably excellent. And what I mean by that is that people don't know what it's going to be like every time. Sometimes the apples are over here, sometimes they're over here. Sometimes there are no apples. Sometimes we don't know what's going to happen today. Come and go with us to church. It's chaos. Nobody's going to do that. There is comfort in predictability. Now, I'm not saying quench the spirit. I'm not saying don't let God have his way. But I'm saying you can plan in a way that God can still move, but that you still had a plan and people knew what they were bringing their guests to. If people don't know what they're bringing their guests to, they will not bring their guests. And so if your service is a free-for-all and people are scared to bring guests, well, guess what? No guests. Well, guess what? No guests, no growth. And so you've got to create an environment where people are comfortable. Think good grocery store, not flea market. We're not trying to have flea market church. We want people to know at this church that they're going to have a good time. They're going to hear the Word of God. They're going to hear some good worship. They're going to meet some friendly people. And we have people's trust. We can't break that trust with people. Because if you break that trust too many times, you burn them 2 or 3 times. They thought they were bringing a guest to an excellent experience, and you break that trust and it's something crazy and off the wall, they won't bring a guest next time, and your church will stop growing. We have their trust that we're not going to have church all day long. Let me park here for a second. Now, y'all, I love church. I love church. I'm a church junkie. I'm addicted to church. Growing up, no lie, I could take 3 or 4 preaching tapes back to back, listen to 4 hours of preaching and be ready for more. I love preaching. I love deep biblical preaching. I love long preaching. I'm just crazy like that. If you've got an hour and 15 minutes worth of content, then bring it on. Now, if you got 12 minutes worth of content and you preach it for an hour and 15 minutes, that's something else entirely. But if you've got the content to back it up, you're not going to wear me out. Bring it on. Same thing with worship. I love worship. I'm a worship leader. There's nothing I enjoy more than worshiping in the presence of God. And you could do it for 2 hours. You could go 2 hours of worship, and I would just, I am here. You can sing for an hour. You can preach for an hour. Well, guess what? Your hour of worship, it's not worship to them yet. It's just you singing some songs that they don't know. They don't have the benefit of experience and the benefit of your context. You got to filter everything through the uninitiated. And so we don't preach an hour and 15 minutes, even though I would enjoy that. We don't sing for an hour, even though I would enjoy that. It's not about me. It's about people who don't speak my language yet and who don't feel what I feel yet. They don't understand the depth of worship that we're pushing to. They're just thinking, man, if we don't get out of here soon, my roast is going to burn. It's going to be dry. We got to go. We got to go. So you've just got to constantly be aware, be predictably excellent. Number 9, do fewer things, but do them extremely well. Do fewer things, but do them extremely well. Our services do not deliver everything we know how to do. They don't. Our services here, a Sunday morning, it runs about, we start at 10 o'clock. Our goal is by 10:40 or so to have pastor in the pulpit. That's all the worship, all the preliminaries, everything. And if we can have him up by 10:30, we consider that a home run. We have him up. He preaches, watch this. He preaches 37 minutes. He preaches, John, am I right? It's about 37 minutes. About 37 minutes, he says, if musicians will come and you'll stand every single time. 37 minutes. I don't know if he means to do that or not. I don't know if he's selected 37 minutes, but he preaches 37 minutes. So we've got about 25 minutes worth of music, about 37 minutes worth of preaching. Our services on the long end are an hour and a half. Now you think, well, that's not enough church. Well, it's not enough church for you. That may still be too much for somebody brand new. And so we just try to pay attention to that. Do fewer things, but do them well. Do less stuff in a service. Just focus on the things that you do, doing them very well. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to have every service. Well, now we're going to have the puppet team come up and do a song. Now we're going to have the women's quartet that were all married to the pastor. Remember that women's quartet the other night? We're going to have them come up and do two numbers that they just wrote in the back before church. They just wrote this song. We're going to have them come up, share that with you. We're going to have the Bible quizzers come up and quote the book of Psalms to you. And then pastor's going to preach, and then the bishop's going to get up and he's got a word for you too. And then the choir's going to sing, and you don't have to do everything you know how to do every service. You probably shouldn't even do half of what you know how to do every service. I'll leave that one alone. Last thing, and I've hit this, but this is just to sum it all up. Keep the focus on the outsider. Keep the focus on the outsider. If you'll keep your focus on the outsider, the rest of this will take care of itself. Because if you're filtering all of that through unchurched people and lost people and what's going to minister to them best, not feed me best. It's more important to reach them than to feed me. That is the shift in concept that we've got to all have. That's what we've got to change about ourselves. Because y'all, we love church. I love church. I love church. But church is not about me. Church is about them. Church is about lost people. Church is about the people who aren't here yet. I'm going to have, we're going to, this is a general session, I know, but we're going to take some questions. I want John and Jonathan to come up here because I figure we may, if we get into details of church service stuff, we may get some worship questions or some technical questions. And I just want to, I want to have them up here to answer some of that in case you have some questions. Filter everything. This is the last thing I want to say to you. Filter everything that happens through the uninitiated. Everything. Every song you sing, every sermon you choose to preach, what the building looks like, what children's ministry is like, all of it. Filter it through people who haven't been there. We are blind to the things that we see all the time. If you don't believe that, go in your church office and somewhere, I guarantee you, somewhere in your church office, there's a box that's been sitting there. Nobody knows what's in the box. Nobody remembers when it got there. It's just been sitting there for a while. There's just stuff, but you don't even see it anymore. We were getting ready for this conference, and y'all, we had something, I don't even know who it is or what it is. It's a bust of a character. I think it was Moses. It was either Moses or Zeus. I don't know who it was. But it has been sitting on top of the cabinets in our office kitchen for I don't know how long. I think it survived the hurricane. The first hurricane 10 years ago. It just rode the hurricane out. It's always been up there. We were who is that? Who is that? Is that one of the former pastors? We don't know who it is. He's just always been up there above the coffee cabinet. So we pulled him down. He's back. He's hiding. We couldn't throw him away because it's probably something very precious to somebody. But you don't realize the stuff that you don't see because you see it all the time. You've got to step out of your building, walk back in and say, does this work for guests? Is this helping our cause with guests? If it's not, get rid of it. Put it in. You don't have to throw it away. Put it in the back closet. But say, is this strange to guests? Does this require an explanation? If it requires an explanation, explain it. If it requires more time to explain it than you have to give it, then hide it. Put it up. Throw it away. Do something with it. Get it out of there. And I mean that both in the literal sense of your physical church complex, and I mean it in the spiritual sense of your church service as well. If it takes so much explanation that you don't have time to explain it, well, then find another venue for it. You don't have to do everything at every service. You don't even have to stop doing it. You've just got to find the right atmosphere for it. All right, I'm going to shut up, and we're going to take some questions. And I tell you, with this many people, do we have a microphone that people with questions could use? Could we have you walk up if you got a question? So everybody can hear. I've played music for too long. I can't hear anything anymore. Sorry, we're just making this stuff up as we go.
A good sound man would have had this done already. If y'all know any, we need one.
I was just going to ask if you could walk us through a Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday service from beginning to end.
Okay, Jonathan, you want to take that one? Just kind of walk through service schedule.
We typically open with 2 songs, upbeat preferably, upbeat to mid-tempo. And then we do the shortest preliminaries possible, which usually consist of a welcome. Someone steps up and does a welcome. And then we have 2 announcements. The first one is, today you received a weekly bulletin when you came in. Please refer to that for your announcements this week. The second one that we announce is, and today is First Steps, Step 2. Immediately following the service, if you're new to this church or if you've been in this church for 30 years, we would love for you to go through First Steps. Step 2 talks about yada, yada, yada. Don't forget, the timer will go at the end of service. It'll start immediately. Let's all stand for prayer. And we stand and we have prayer. The needs are on the wall screen. And then we move into a time of worship, which we incorporate offering as part of worship, because it is. And so the first thing in the worship is offering, and we move into usually 3 songs on the back set. I typically start at least mid-tempo or upbeat, and then do whatever. So, but 3 songs on the back, unless they're like 8 or 10 minute songs, and we cut it to 2. Sunday night, open with 2 songs. Again, almost always upbeat opener. 2 songs, the least amount of preliminaries as possible. And really that's very simple on Sunday night. Pretty much a welcome, and then referring to the bulletin again for the weekly announcements. Go into prayer. Sometimes on Sunday nights we will move prayer to interrupt the second song so that it flows within a moment. And then we'll have offering of 1 more song and pastor will speak. Wednesday nights, we've just recently moved to, we use Wednesday nights kind of as a discipleship night, a training night. And so we have multiple breakouts happening all over the campus. So if Tanil needs to meet with the entire greet team and ushers and hostess team, she can meet with them. There's always a main session in here. We always post signs for people to seat themselves forward, those kind of details. But we use that night for ministry trainings and things like that. There's no music on a Wednesday night. John has energetic, happy music going at whatever decibel level he has going on a Wednesday night. We always start with a countdown just because we know if we are intentionally starting at 7:04, we don't want people thinking that we forgot to start church. So when the countdown starts, at least people know that you're doing that. But when it ends, someone steps up, does a welcome prayer over the night, and then pastor teaches.
And one thing I would point out on Wednesday night, something that we have not really pointed out this week yet, the first Wednesday of every month, we do a first Wednesday worship service. And that is all hands on deck, everybody in this room. And it's, production even to a greater degree than Sundays sometimes. We'll do more music. We go all out on the first Wednesday of every month. It's kind of a family reunion. We just get everybody together and we announce that. You know what? If you're busy on Wednesdays, if you can't make it to any other Wednesday this month, you've got to be here for First Wednesday. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be amazing. And so we'll spend more time in worship, draw out prayer, just have an awesome, just a blowout Wednesday night service. And it lets the rest of those Wednesdays be training nights. We should have had more mics out. Sorry, but we just kind of decided to do this. I realize this may be a session that invited some questions.
With so many new people in the building, what's your process for identifying first-time visitors?
We don't really take it as an identifying. When y'all came in Wednesday night, we handed you our bulletin that has our weekly announcements in it. On that is a detachable Connect card. If you want those files, they'll be uploaded to the resource page. Just change the logos out and print them. The concept of that is we just let them tear it off, and put it in the offering. The only communication as far as follow-up with our guests, they get one letter or one email, depending on which they gave us. Typically, they give us an email. They get one email inviting them back to pastor's meal, whichever Sunday that is. So like if they came on the third Sunday of the month, pastor's meal is on the first Sunday of the month. We'd love for you to join us and get to know us. That is the only thing we send our guests. As far as identifying them as first-time guests, we don't ever make the call to identify. Don't ever ask somebody, is this your first time here? Because you don't ever want to know that answer. Because one time I did it, and the lady had been here 6 months, and I hadn't met her. And so don't ever ask if somebody is a first-time guest. Just say, hey, it's so good to have you here. Have you been to pastor's meal yet? Or, you need to come with me to pastor's meal. And don't ever just come out and ask, is this your first time here? Because you don't want to know.
I always say, I haven't had a chance to meet you yet. That's the safe intro to somebody. Rather than saying, oh, is this your first time? No, we've been here for 3 years. You just haven't ever talked to me.
That's happened.
I haven't had a chance to meet you yet. Will open a lot of doors for you.
And so we send them the one ask. We would love for you to come back and join us. We don't send them a coffee cup. We don't, and we laugh about it because we have baked the
We've
cakes
tried it all.
and tried that. So
What we've realized as far as connecting with first-time guests, second-time guests, our big win is if we can get them into First Steps, if we can get them to come over there, and very frequently they do. So we focus our attention on those who have expressed an interest. Rather than trying to convince people to have an interest, we say, hey, here's what we're doing. If you like what you felt here today, if you love this place, walk across the hallway, join us in First Steps. Well, when they go in there, then we go all out. I mean, we want a blood sample from you when we get you in there. But we want you to express an interest, because if you express an interest, then we know, hey, we're on you. We know that you're a prospect and you're going to become a member here. Anybody else? Is that it? Oh, here comes one more. 2 more.
you can come line up. We've got 6 chairs in the front. You can sit up.
Quickly, how many people did it take for you to first set up your First Steps class? Did you say, hey, we've got so many people coming, we need to have some sort of avenue for them to integrate, or is it just sporadic and you just did it, let's do it one Sunday?
We do it every, and I may not be answering the question exactly. If you need to come back up, come back and I'll clarify anything. First Steps, we do it every month, and it's in the same room, set up the same way. Getting it started, and if you've got questions about getting it started, my next lab in here, I'm going to talk through how we started all of these things. First Steps, how we started the Dream Team culture, all that. I'm going to deal with some of that in the last lab of the day right here. But as far as how many people it takes, with a setup room and one person, you can initiate it as a process, because it's just basically connecting with people.
And childcare.
Yes, you got to have childcare.
Childcare.
You've got to have childcare, because what we've learned, especially in our dynamic, we get a lot of young families in. Well, if you can't take care of their kids while they're over there, you don't want the kids in the room, and you certainly can't. They'll just leave if you don't have something for their kids. So you need somebody. We've done it with as few as one person handling it and one person handling childcare. The crazy thing about the way we do it is there's no way to guarantee the crowd. Sometimes 3 people show up, sometimes 2 people show up, sometimes 35 people show up. So you just kind of have to be ready to anticipate. You just got to be ready. You got to be ready. Did that answer? Okay.
Pastor's Lunch is the first Sunday of every month. If they come the second Sunday for the first time, they're invited to the Pastor's Lunch. Do they wait till the first Sunday of next to start the process, or can they come the third Sunday?
They come anytime they're interested. We tell them to come. If the second Sunday is their first time in this building ever, then we say, hey, you know what? You can start this process anytime. It gets a little iffy if they show up on week 4. Because week 4 is where we try to get you plugged into a ministry, but we'll still let them come. We don't ever turn anybody away. We'll say, hey, you know what? Today's week 4. Come on in. We'll show you kind of what we're doing. You just need to come next month. You need to start the process over. And you may even want to come to step 4 again next month to just make sure you get plugged in. But we want you to come in come enjoy the meal and see what's going on.
Maybe just sort of an interesting question. I've learned a lot at this conference about what to do with people once they get here. What is the primary source of actually getting people here for your church?
Small groups.
Small groups.
I mean, we live in Houston. People, there are outreach methods, and Lavelle is in here somewhere. Our small groups pastor deals a lot with our outreach groups. Outreach in Houston, you don't go knock on somebody's door in Houston or anywhere in Texas. They're armed. It's just that's just not, even though we're Southern, the concept of going and knocking, we believe, is it like 82% of people would come to church if they were invited by a friend? We want our church people to have relationships with people that they invite to church. And Lavelle is right there. He can answer any questions on outreach as far as what we do. Our biggest outreach is our small groups and our serve teams, and that's how we get most of our guests.
And I would tack on to that, yes. And one of the dynamics of small groups, I've got guys coming to my house right now on Tuesday nights. They've never been to this church yet, but they're part of my small group. I'm going to get them here. But that's the on-ramp. I'm just trying to build relationships right now. The second thing that I would say is that we preach, teach, announce, print, everything we can do to prioritize in people's minds the importance of you bringing somebody. Your church service can't be good enough to attract people to come. Somebody's got to say, hey, come and go with me. And so if you can create that culture in people, if you can get that mindset in people, then their small groups will automatically become an outreach, and they'll bring people with them.
Can you give us an idea on how you take attendance and how you deal with like member absenteeism? So not just keeping up with your visitors, but also absenteeism.
This is going to be a big one. We don't. We have actually gotten to a place where we can't effectively take attendance as a whole right now, as far as somebody standing in the back and marking present or not from the whole church family. What we do is we take attendance in children's ministry. Chances are, if the kid's there, you can assume the parent's there. We take we hope. We take attendance in children's ministry. We track our volunteers. Our dream teamers, that's what we check to see, are our dream teamers serving? Because it just got to a place of the concept of absenteeism. There will come a day as your church grows that the systems just run out of energy. You can't do it anymore. It's not sustainable. There's too much moving around. It's too hard to see without literally just people walking up and down the row and checking people off. And so we've had to recalibrate and say, okay, we're going to track volunteers, we're going to track children, we're going to track baptisms, we're going to count all of the stuff that counts. But as far as absenteeism and having the problem of how do we communicate with people that have missed 3 Sundays in a row, we just finally outran our playbook. There was no other option. Nothing was working. We were missing people. We were calling people saying, hey, we missed you this Sunday. And well, I was there. And so you do that 2 or 3 times and you realize, okay, it's simply not working. We have to do something different. And so what we've done differently is we have focused on making sure that our volunteers are serving in the place that they're supposed to be. If they're no showing on worship team and no showing on greeters, well, that's where we have those conversations of, hey, we've been missing you. You accepted the front door position 3 weeks in a row and you haven't shown up. What's going on? Is there something we need to talk about? So we have focused our efforts on those who are serving. Does that help?
Speaking of tracking, what software or programs do you use to track that kind of stuff, church management type stuff? And then a twofold question is, do you track spiritual maturity? And how do you, and I don't know if this is an appropriate way to word it, but how do you categorize where people are in the process?
Mm-hmm. So two things, and probably Cameron could answer this better than I can. But one of the labs yesterday on church administration, he went through some of the resources and programs we use. We use Church Metrics. Is that what we track all the big stuff with? That's it. That's where we track attendance numbers and that sort of thing. It measures all of that. You can set it up to track whatever you want to track. We do track as far as tracking tracking people and volunteers. We use Planning Center online for everything. Planning Center is a church management system. It is completely free. It's free. We use a free system to track, all of your people that are here and their addresses and all that kind of stuff. Now, there are modules that you pay for. Planning Center is also what we use to plan services and all that. But the Planning Center People module is a free service that you can track people. The beautiful thing about it is if you use it for giving and everything, when a person makes a donation and enters their information, they're automatically in your People software. If you add a new volunteer, they're already in the People software. It ties all that together. So between Planning Center and Church Metrics, that's how we track. As far as what we track and tracking spiritual maturity, we count everything. We count people that are here. We count cars in the parking lot. We count baptisms. We track people that have received the Holy Ghost. We track people. We can tell you who has been through what step of our First Steps program. I can pull a report and say, okay, I need to know who all has completed all 4 steps of First Steps. We track small group involvement as to the degree that we can. So yes, the short answer is we track anything that we can come up with a way to get data on. We collect data. We collect some data that I don't even know if we do anything with it, but we want to make sure that we're good stewards of the people that God sends our way. So to the degree that we can, we track everything.
I have to interrupt, and we have to dismiss because of a very important reason. The Bluebell is melting in the lobby. There's Bluebell in the lobby. We will be down here for questions
I'll come
if
answer
you've
your
got some.